Hey guys, what's up? Zach and ZR Chess, and today I want to go over a game I recently played. And the game has good and bad, and a lot to learn from. There were some mistakes on my part, some mistakes on my opponent's part, and I just want to go through it. So let's go through this game and see what we can learn from it. So I was playing black. My opponent was rated 1911. I was 1929. And so we go ahead and start off. And there's an interesting move in the beginning, I just want to say, with the knight coming out first. It's odd. I don't see it very often. Usually it's either e4, e4, d4, or c4. And with the knight coming out first, it almost puts them at a bit of a disadvantage. I know there's different openings that can go with this, but in this sense, I went ahead and started with d5. And we were working in kind of a backwards London. And so, you all know I play, if you watch me at all, you know I love to play London as white. So now I'm kind of playing London as black, and I'm trying to figure out how this all fits together. And I wasn't upset about it. I mean, playing, I've almost got a bit of a tempo here. So after he plays the pawn there, we're looking to push forward to d4. I went ahead and brought my bishop out like I would in the London. And it all looked pretty straightforward from here. So the knight comes over, and this is a weird place for his pawns to be. Honestly, he's not trying to fight for the center right now. He's kind of got a nice little hut, you might say, a nice little stronghold, but he's blocked his bishop in. His other bishop isn't going anywhere soon because his pawn is right here on d3, and he's not fighting for any of this center. So I went ahead and took more center space. Well, first I did the London thing, get my bishop free, and then after he looked here to fianchetto, then, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. This pawn is pretty strong here at the moment. I went ahead and took more center space with c5. So at this point, I've got way more space. We both have just about the same tempo, you could say. And I've got nothing wrong with this. So it brings the bishop out, and here I played knight c6, which I was not thrilled with after a while. If you can tell why, if you want to pause it and see why. It's not a blunder, it's just it was an annoying move, because I should have played something like bishop comes out first and castled, because once I played knight c6, he was able to come in queen a4 and pin me. And this pin is really annoying because now he's going to start throwing shots at my knight, and I'm going to have to keep defending so I don't go down a pawn, and he doesn't gain space in here, and it's making it really hard to castle. So if I could avoid this pin altogether, it would have been preferable. Or if my knight even would have come to d7, it might have been a bit better. I like the knight on c6 better, but in this scenario, it was just annoying. So I brought my bishop out, ready to castle and break the pin, and then, as expected, the knight comes in to attack. So, if I let this go, his knight takes my knight, my pawn takes, and then queen takes pawn. And he's broken into this whole queen side, and with a check, might I add, and it's just going to be really annoying. So I wanted to avoid that, so queen comes up to protect, and attacking the knight at the same time. e4, attacking my bishop, just throwing more attacks at me. And I go ahead and take the knight. This was a blunder on his part. If you can see, he missed that. This is now pinning the pawn to the king, and so he can't take my bishop. So huge blunder on his part. And it's an easy mistake to make. You think you're counterattacking. Always make sure when you're counterattacking that, first of all, there isn't a third attack coming, and then you've got two attacks to deal with where they only have one. And then also make sure, like this, that if I place a move to take your piece, then I'm not going to be pinning your king and making this pawn take unavailable. So at this point, I'm up at knight, and he's got to figure out a way to get around that. He castles, trying to open this up. Now I want to protect my bishop, and at the same time, I'm trying to get this knight, to safety and castle and all that jazz. So bishop comes back. It's probably the best move I had at the moment. I could have come up, and then more pawn attacks would come and push him down anyway. Now I could have taken with the pawn and I looked at this, and if I took with the pawn, it doesn't look so hot for me because after it takes, then we've got both of these pieces ironed down on my knight, and this is going to be ugly because I don't have the queen down here anymore. And if I choose to castle, then bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes with check, and then wins my rook. So something I had to calculate ahead of time before I made this move, that I could not take this piece. And if he took me, that's fine. I'll take back with the knight or the pawn. But I did not want to take that for that reason. So the bishop comes back, and then he comes down with a pawn. Now, once again, it was 1, 2 to my 1, 2, 3 attackers. So this time I actually went ahead and took. And taking the pawn, and then the knight came in to attack my queen. Now, I was thinking about taking this pawn here on e4, right? It looks like he left it open for me, but after a little calculation, I figured this was going to be very dangerous. That's why it's to always be careful of free pieces like this that are given almost intentionally. So if I take the pawn, then knight d4, knight takes g4 check. I'm sorry, not check, but he's attacking my queen. So discovered attack on my queen. And I have to deal with this discovered attack and protect this knight at the same time. And I can't do it. It's not feasible. So I have to protect the queen. And then after knight takes c6, pawn takes c6, queen takes c6, once again, he's won my rook. So this would have been devastating. And it's important to note that that this was calculated at this point, knowing not to take this pawn. So calculation is key to these kind of scenarios to see, okay, can I take this pawn? And it looks on the surface like you can, because all of this looks pretty good, except for a couple moves down the line, you're really going to get hit after that discovered attack, and then this knight's gonna looks like an even trade, but then you're going to lose your rook. So that would have wrecked my whole game. So instead of doing that, I had to retreat the queen. Queen came down to c7, protecting the knight again. Just kind of a reset. I'm up a knight at this moment. At this point, I'm not trying to be too aggressive. If I can just trade off pieces and get to a solid endgame, I'll be happy. So then he plays e5, and at this point, I played knight g4. And this is a mistake in my opinion because of something that happens later, and because it would have been better just to play it down to d7. Knight d7 looks a whole lot cleaner, and I'm still attacking the pawn like I want. I can come up here and attack the queen, and I've even broken the pin to this knight, and so I don't have to worry about all that stuff. This would have been a much cleaner move instead of knight g4, where I can get attacked by a pawn, and I can't come up here. I'd have to come to h6 and then f5. It's not pretty. So this was definitely a mistake. And then he takes a pawn on d4, and this is where I run into a bit of trouble. Look and see if you can think what the best move is. And at this point, what's my whole game been about, right? It's been about trying to mess with this pin, which has been annoying me the whole game, and I finally have the opportunity. He's given me a breath of fresh air to castle, right? This was my blunder. This was what was my downfall, running into the end of the game. So I went ahead and castled and freed up this thing. Everything looks good except for now knight b5, attacking my queen, and the lateral queen move to take my knight. I've talked about this before in my videos. Lateral queen moves are something to always be aware of, because a lot of times they're hard to see, especially one like this. It's a discovered attack, lateral queen move, and it's nasty. I wasn't even looking at this for my knight. I was, saying at this point it doesn't matter because there's nothing I can do to save it. At this point, I've already fallen into the trap because I have to move my queen now, and I can't move my queen anywhere to save my knight. So at this point, it was too late. I needed to have calculated this back here. And again, we see how important calculation is. So right there, my miscalculation cost me a knight, and I was ahead of knight. So really, this just put us back on equal terms, but still not something I'm a fan of. So I went ahead and took the pawn, and then he actually missed this. Funny enough, this isn't what he was after. He missed this. I forgot about this. He missed this whole knight take and came down to attack my queen instead. And I had seen this bishop move, which I wasn't too impressed with. That didn't seem like anything to be worried about. Because now I can come up here to e2. And at this point, I am clearly winning because he could have evened up the material with that, and since he didn't, this is no longer pinned, and I am clearly ahead in development and space. His queen's doing nothing over here. His knight is doing nothing over here. And then I've got a nice little attack coming in on this, especially if I bring the bishops in. So after h3, I went ahead and came back. Pawn moves up to b3, protecting the pawn. I was attacking with my queen. And e4. e4 is kind of mostly just an outpost move. Protecting it with my pawn, obviously, and I can't really do any attack here per se. Maybe eventually I could attack this pawn, but this was mainly for two reasons. One, I wanted to incite this move right here. I wanted him to do this and make his king weaker, which would be great for me, and maybe I could bring in the bishop to c5 and get some attacks there. And if he didn't do that, then this knight is just well placed. It's blocking his bishop from doing a lot of things. It is blocking my bishop, but I can worry about that later after moves like f6 and then bishop down to e8. So yeah, so that wasn't a big deal. I had considered bishop e4, and instead of the knight there, but it didn't look so great after that, because the bishop can't bounce around like the knight can. So after that, it would have still provoked the pawn up, sure. I would have gone to d3, and then if he goes here, I don't have the diagonal for my queen, and it looked a little dangerous for my queen, and I was down a little bit on time at this point. I didn't want to have to calculate too deep. I couldn't calculate too deep, not at that point. So I went with a knight. And rook went to e1, predictably, attacking my queen. So I came over to d3, and then rook's following me around. I go back, and if he was going to go back to that point again, I would not have gone back and forth with a draw. I didn't want to draw because clearly I'm winning this game right now. I would have came over to to say h5, and then laterally and try to get out of here. That was my plan. So, but he used the other rook, and this was a blunder, obviously, if you can see it, because he clearly missed this. Check. And this just wrecked his whole game after king f1, and he went ahead and resigned because it was just going to get really nasty from here. If I wanted to, I could even just taking the pawn, and then after takes, and his whole king side is demolished. My king side is looking great. I've got a great pawn chain, one pawn island. I mean, this is beautiful. So that was the end of the game. So I hope you guys learned something from the game. I hope my mistakes and also what I did well was a teachable moment for you. Let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe. I'm gonna start doing these videos more often with going over my past games, good and bad from them, and what we can all learn from them. So thanks for watching.